In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear axle on this Jeep Grand Cherokee. This will be located behind your rear wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Continuing from there, we're going to remove all 5 of our 22mm lug nuts in the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, the next thing we're going to do is pay attention right in the center here. We have our axle nut. Use the 32mm socket to remove this. If you're using a hand tool, you may find that this wants to spin on you. If that's the case, you could have somebody inside of the vehicle holding on the brake, or you can use a pry bar down diagonally to the ground, preventing it from spinning. We'll use some penetrant in this area and continue on with a hammer and punch directly in the center of the axle. After you have movement from here, we'll continue on to removing our brake caliper. To remove the brake caliper, we're going to remove our 2 18mm headed mounting bolts holding it in place. There's one out in the open down along the bottom here and one just above it. After you remove the first one, go ahead and start it back in just a couple threads, fully remove the second. Now we can remove the brake caliper. Inspect the brake pads. If it looks like they're worn or damaged, you want to go ahead and do a brake job. Other than that, as far as the caliper, make sure it's not leaking. Assuming that looks good, you want to hang this aside, putting no pressure on your flex hose. Continuing from here, let's remove our brake rotor. A quick inspection and set it aside. Continuing from there, we're going to follow the upper control arm inward, and we're focusing on the ABS wire. We need to dislodge it in several areas. We'll start up along the subframe here. Use a trim tool or small prying device, lift it up and out of position. Let's follow it along the control arm now. A couple more mounting points. Just want to try to get in between with our small trim tool or prying device and separate it. Now we have plenty of slack from the ABS wire. Let's continue on focusing at the upper control arm to where it connects to the knuckle. In this area, you're going to find an 18mm headed bolt and an 18mm headed mounting nut. We'll remove the pair. We have movement here. Let's leave this in there temporarily and continue on. Our next piece of mounting hardware is right here. We have our 18mm headed mounting nut out in the open. The bolt comes through from the inboard side. Sure we have movement there. A quick inspection of the hardware as we continue. We'll be replacing things as necessary. Let's move towards the rear. We have another arm here that we have to dislodge using our 18mm. The nut's on the inboard side. Continuing from here, we're going to remove the upper mounting bolt. Once you have that removed, we need to take hold of this. We're going to start pivoting it outward. At the same time as pivoting this out, we also need to be pushing the axle inward and then sliding out through along the backside. There we are. Now we can follow the axle inboard. A collection receptacle under this area will continue on with a pry bar. The pry bar is going to go in between the axle and the rear differential. Gently start prying to separate this. Once you do have movement, we can remove the axle from this area. Now as we start bringing this out, you're going to find that you have to lift up on the control arm a little bit. There it is, friend. Continuing from there, we're going to clean and inspect the seal. Make sure it's soft and pliable, not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. After confirming here, let's have a look along the back side of our rear wheel bearing. Everything's clean. Lubricate your seal with some petroleum jelly. Now it's time to install our axle. We'll start with the inboard side. This is going to have to make its way in between this area. Then we'll make our way underneath, aligning the axle. As I'm pressing this in, I'm giving it a light twist. Continuing from here, we have to lightly drive this in. It does have a locking ring. We need to make sure it's properly secured. Once you have it pressed in, take hold of the inboard side here, and we're trying to remove it. If it slides out, it's not locked in. Assuming it doesn't, we can continue on out here. In this area on the axle, we're going to use some anti-seize on the splined area, not necessarily on the threaded portion here. A gloved finger to spread it around. Continuing on from here, we'll take this axle and bring it along the backside of the knuckle and through the bearing. There we are. It's time for our mounting hardware. We'll start with where the upper control arm goes onto the knuckle. Slide that right through. 18mm nut. We'll just start it on. Continuing on, we have our next link here. For this one, the mounting bolt will come through from the inside to the outside, and we'll have our 18mm nut out here. Make our way back here. Start the nut on there. Before we can tighten and torque our hardware, you need to apply upward support underneath the lower control arm, bringing this into the original ride height position. Continuing on, we'll make our way to this rearward arm. Snug this, torque it to 79 foot-pounds. We'll make our way to the camber link here. Snug this, torque it to 81 foot-pounds. Can make our way up here. The torque for this is 79 foot-pounds. Remove support from under your suspension. Now it's time for the ABS wire. We'll secure this into the subframe along the back side here. Now we can make our way along the control arm as well. Double check, make sure it's properly secured. You don't want this getting damaged. Now it's time for our axle nut. We'll start this on by hand. Whenever you're tightening this, never use an impact tool. You can cause damage to your bearing. At this point, we're going to torque this to 229 foot-pounds. When you go to do this, you may find it wants to spin. If it wants to spin, use a pry bar diagonally down to the ground, making its way across a couple of your lug studs. We'll torque this to 229 foot-pounds. At this point, we'll pay attention to the hub mating surface. This is where your brake rotor will sit. We want to make sure it's a clean mating surface. You can use a wire brush or a light sanding disc. After the surface is as clean as possible, we'll continue on with some anti-seize on the mating surface. If you're reusing your original rotor, you want to make sure you clean up the back side on the mating surface here. After cleaning that, we can install it on the vehicle. When you go to install the rotor, we're going to slide it over the emergency brake shoes. We want to have a pre-adjustment on these, so when you slide it over, you want to make sure you don't have any resistance, but you do also want to be able to hear a light touch of the shoes on the inside of the rotor. If you have a hard time sliding it on, you want to de-adjust your adjuster. And if it sounds like it's too loose, it's not making any contact at all, you need to adjust it out a little bit, but make sure you don't have too much friction. Let's get our caliper in place here. With the caliper in position, we can start in our 2 caliper bracket bolts, snug them up, and then torque those to 89 foot-pounds. One last quick inspection in this area. Let's reinstall our wheel. Start on all 5 of your 22mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out. Get the wheel safely on the ground, and we can torque each of these to 130 foot-pounds. With the wheel back on the ground, we'll be torquing these to 130 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay, friend, we've got our vehicle back together. At this point, you want to go ahead and make sure you pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. After that, you can go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.